whether you're a main contractor or a subcontractor, is the architect is much less important than you think they are, right?
And I think you have to be very cutthroat and say, look, is there a change in the employer's requirements? Because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. I ended up kind of accelerating my career and earnings in my early 20s by being...
Everything okay?
Hello and welcome to Question Time, episode 212.1. It's our fourth Question Time episode ever, and we're starting to really enjoy these, aren't we, Christopher? Chris is back with me. How are you, Chris Barber?
I'm great. I'm still waiting to go down that pub, though.
We're all waiting to go down the pub. We definitely are. So, just a reminder, once a month on a Tuesday, we will be doing this after the episodes that Chris is usually here. If you have any questions, just blooming well send them to us, because we want to answer them, and we've got some crackers for the show this time around. So I'm going to start. This is from Shane, who is a subcontract QS, right? And he sent me an email after listening to episode 209 with our lovely guest Sarah Fox, and he said this: listen to episode 209 with Sarah, and it got me thinking. As a subcontractor, it's crucial to understand the rationale behind any amendments to contract clauses. For larger, more established specialists, pushing back on these changes can be easier due to their leverage. However, smaller subcontractors, as I am, often face a different reality. After winning a job, they may receive a lengthy contract with a tight deadline to sign. When they raise concern about risky clauses, the main contractor's commercial manager or QS may respond with pressure, implying that if they don't sign, another subby will. In such scenarios, smaller subbies feel trapped between two tough choices. 1, refuse to sign and miss out on the work. 2, accept the contract with potentially significant risks that they may not fully comprehend or be equipped to manage. How would you navigate this situation as a smaller subby? Personally, I would carefully review the contract, identify key risks, and then discuss these findings with my director, emphasising the risk, but I would leave the final decision to my director as to whether or not they want to proceed. Christopher, what do you think?
Oh, it's a good question. So, how I would approach this is, I think they're doing the right thing, but it's being a bit more proactive in the process, and actually it kind of shouldn't sit on the QS's desk, if I'm being honest. I think there should be an internal review where we did it when we were a subcontractor. So there was things happening, like we were getting orders and we were like, hang on a minute, we haven't even visited site to see if access can be resolved. And then we'd have variations on like day one because from the contract, whereas we could have built that into the price, like a price revision, and get it included. And it's just a much more conducive and better relationship from the outset rather than a variation coming in. So what I would say is, in the estimating commercial handover or that process, is that that the estimator asks for a draft contract during that tender process. So if it's going well, you've had a mid-tender meeting or something like that, you should ask for the draft contract to be submitted. At that stage, you can raise concerns a lot further in advance and not have to wait
have the gun to your time.
Yeah, and I think it's a pragmatic approach for both parties that way.
Yeah, that's the first thing that stood out to me, right? So it would almost be a bit of a red flag getting a tender without a contract. Now, some people might think that's a bit OTT, but I've had people on this show who are larger subcontractors, so Shane, recognise you're smaller, but and that brings with it different challenges in terms of pipeline and so on, but larger subcontractors who have said, I won't even look at the tender unless I know what the contract is. And if you tell me what the contract is, if you say to me the contract is an unamended JCT D&B subcontract, happy days, I'll give you a really good and competitive price, right? Because there's no, I was going to say bull something, but there's no nonsense in there. I can get on board with an unamended contract. But I would almost be tempted to say, and again, this is easy to say when I'm not running the business, But I would almost be tempted to say, thanks for your tender. Notice there isn't any contract clauses. What's the contract going to be? And then, because it is a bit of a red flag in my mind if they're not sending the contract. Yeah. Any good, competent main contractor will send you the contract because they don't want to be in the position where, like, I mean, it's just madness, isn't it? Because Shane is looking at this from the subcontract perspective of, oh my God, I got the contract, I've got 2 weeks to do it and whatever else. But if I'm the main contractor, I don't want to be like, yeah, go to my board and say, I've sorted it out. I've got Shane, he's going to be great. And he's on 200 grand, job done. And he starts in 2 weeks. And then they go, oh, has he signed a contract? He goes, no, he hasn't even seen it yet, mate. That's the next step. It doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, and it kind of loops back into what Sarah mentioned in the podcast I listened to. I think, was it this week or last week got launched? She said, have you priced for this risk? Like, because if you receive the contract and there's loads of risky clauses, are you getting reimbursed for that risk? Yeah. And it's probably a no if it's like highly amended and etc. So how can you provide a comprehensive price that is in accordance
if you don't know what the payment terms are?
If you don't know what the risk is.
Yeah.
So.
I agree. So I think, we're probably not answering Shane's question in some ways here, right? But so the question was, how would you navigate this situation as a smaller subcontractor? I think what I would do is I would say our new internal procedure is if we receive a tender that doesn't have a contract or clarity on a contract, we will ask for it. And we will say, what will the formal contract be? And then once we understand that, you're kind of proactively dealing with it. What happens though, like, the world is not that simple.
Yeah.
So I think you agree with me, right? That's a good procedure to put in place.
Yeah.
So one of our great clients sends me a tender tomorrow. And last time round, we never asked for the contract. And you know that they're going to have bespoke main contract amendments that are different from project 1 to project 2. So you know it's going to be a different contract. You say to them, send me the contract. And I say, Chris, why do you want the contract now? I'll send you the contract if we get there. You don't need it now. What would your response be then?
I would say, look, we've got a procedure in-house where we're getting the contracts all assessed just to manage risk during the whole process, the tender process, to make sure we're providing you with the service that is in accordance with your requirements. Yeah, so you could like flip it a little bit that way. It's never going to be an easy conversation or straightforward.
But it should be though, shouldn't it? Do you remember that time on Project 1 where we ended up with a bit of a gun to both of our heads? It was a bit stressful, wasn't it? I had to go to my director, you had to go to yours, and we were negotiating and we were 3 days away from site. We don't want to do that again, do we?
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing to say there is like, I don't want to delay start on site for our package if we win. I want us to be proactive, get it agreed, sign contract in less than a week, no messing around, and it's better for everybody. So there is an upsell for both parties. I completely agree. I would have loved that, honestly. I used to send out what the formal contract would be when I was tendering.
Yeah.
And when we had more complex contracts, I'd send that to them because, we work with regular people all the time. Our small works order wasn't going to
break the world.
Yeah. But like when we had bespoke contracts put onto us and we had to kind of flip those terms back out to those guys and have bespoke subcontracts made, I'd share that in advance.
Yeah, and just to round that point off, we have built Sealing as a product where it is impossible to send out a tender without being clear about what the end contract is. Why did we do that? We did that because it makes the entire process much more transparent, much more simple, and it takes away a lot of the stress that you were talking about, Shane. So I think you reflect on the challenges that you've had as a business and that you then say, you know what, this is how we're going to do things moving forward. And there's no reason for a good quality main contract client to not say, that's a great idea, Shane, I'll send it to you now. They should do. Anyway, right. Okay, this one is a good one. The second question that we've had come in. I don't know why I found this funny, but it is quite simple. I want to know how to earn more as a QS. Money, money, money. So for me specifically, I retrained as a QS at 29. I qualified at 34. And I've been in the industry for 8 years now. So I have 2 degrees in international business management and applied management in the energy industry. I feel that without completing my APC or becoming chartered, I am being ring-fenced as a QS in my role. This has resulted in me applying for roles and taking a sideways move to gain experience about pre-contract processes. APC, NEC, JCT. I want to know your opinion on how to earn more as a QS. What do you think?
Okay, so I don't think the APC side of things, so being RICS accredited, were you?
I wasn't, no.
Neither was I. I know a lot of high earning QSs that aren't APC or RICS accredited. It is obviously good to have that, but I don't think it's the be all and end all to be earning money.
No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think it's different at consultant QS level. Like if you're a PQS, you probably, that is the path that is trodden. As a subby, which we both were, and then you were a main contractor, right? There isn't many main contracting organisations saying you need to be APC, etc., etc. That's not to downplay it. And again, we're talking to our experience here. If you want to be APC, if you want to like travel with your job, and you keep on seeing adverts on LinkedIn saying Australia, New Zealand, Canada, all these places want QSs, right? Because there isn't enough targeted ads. But if you want to do that, the APC is kind of like your free. It's like your passport around.
You're looking for a job, mate. You've been in a cookies been getting over there.
Yeah, yeah. It's looking to anything except for working with you, mate. No, so clearly that it's not to downplay the value of the APC. Does the APC guarantee you more money? It probably does in the consultant world, right? Anna, my partner, she works in consultancy as a PM, and there it is much more structured, isn't it? In terms of you hit a level, you get more money. You do X, you get more money. My experience in subcontracting was that actually subcontracting was pretty well paid. If you're like niche, right? Being a QS generally is pretty well paid, I think. But to really give yourself a way to empower you with getting more money, it is a difficult one, isn't it?
Maybe you want to discover what path do you want to go on. Do you want to go into, because I think you said they've shifted over to pre-con or something like that. But do you want to be in pre-con? Do you want to get to commercial director, or what does that look like? Yeah. And then try and work back the steps that way and think, right, and sometimes you have to take a bit of a step down to go up again. Yeah. So if you're a subcontractor and I went to main contractor, obviously it was looked down when I joined that I've only had subcontract experience.
Really?
It was a semi-sideways step for me, but I knew the opportunity that was there, so that's why I took it. It wasn't a step backwards, but it was a bit of a shuffle sideways, upwards. But I just knew it would yield better results for me. So I think you've got to look at it like that. And I've known people to kind of take a different avenue in their lives. But what outcome do you want? Where do you want to get to? And
I think that's good advice. And also this person has said they've got 2 degrees in international business management and applied management, right? So clearly there is significant management acumen there, right? So they should be able to say, I want to be a commercial director, or I want to be a MD, or flip it and think backwards, right? So I want to be at this point. What do I need to get there? And also, we were talking on episode 212 yesterday about, I asked you, how much of the contract did you understand? And you said 10, 20%. I'd probably say similar, right? And I ended up kind of accelerating my career and earnings in my early 20s by being the, in inverted commas, specialist in JCT in my company. I wasn't a specialist, right? That's the funny thing about it. I knew 10, 20% of it. Yeah. But I knew how, if someone asked me, tell me about a relevant event, I'd know where to go and so on. So the question there at the end, APC, NEC, JCT, I think my advice on that, from my experience, would be try and specialise in something. Because you're a great QS, I was a decent QS. There's lots of QSs in that company that I was in. But because I was the person that could navigate JCTs, it kind of elevated me a little bit. So I do think specialising in a trade as a subby, people, I think, generally kind of look down at subbies and think, nah, That would be the lower end. My experience is that you can earn really good money at subby. And my advice would be specialise in a contract form, JCT, NEC, FIDIC, something like that.
Yeah, and I think as well, do you want to have if you're a main contractor and then think, well, I might go to a subcontractor, you'll be so valuable to them because you've got that main contract experience. And do you want skin in the game? Do you want to have that kind of co-ownership or shares in the business? These are all things to consider because, what is that end goal look like for you as a...
One of our good mates is actually kind of taken a bit of a, still earning good money, but taking a bit of a backward step from potential commercial leadership at a main contractor to commercial leadership at a pretty decent sized specialist, right? But there is like skin in the game to be had from there as well. So there's loads of different routes. I think being very clear on the outcome that you're looking for. Like when you say, I want to earn more money, I'm sure there's a number associated to that. And it's probably a good idea that you didn't put it in this question. But thinking about that, and my advice would be specialise in NEC or JCT. Pick one of them. I've done loads of episodes of this show, which is people who have made good money specialising in a contract. And we've kind of proven it on this show, haven't we? Like you didn't know it that well, I didn't know it that well. We both earned good money as QSs, but there's more to be done. So hopefully that is a good answer for your question. Let's take a break here, Chris, and we'll come back after this. Welcome back, guys. So this one is a technical. We've got a couple of nice little technical questions coming up, actually. So this one, simple and to the point. Got to love it. What scope gaps and interfaces should I be most worried about with brickwork and like archwork / specials, etc.? And actually, same question for plastering, molds, features, etc. Chris, I mean, just you're looking at me blank-faced. No, I need you to take the lead on this one. I cannot do this.
Yeah.
I am a meager curtain wall contractor. Come on.
Glorified PVC windows.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? Safe Sale UK? That's what I did, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. So, good question. And
treat it as if you're telling me, right? Because I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah. So there's a few things in here, and it would be how I approached when I was doing variations upstream or procuring. So you'd look at a package, let's just say brickwork, for example. You're like, great, got a brickwork price.
Yeah. Access,
right? Who's providing the access, right? Do we need scaffold? All these things, what kind of podiums, etc. How do we do this? So it's like, great. The first thing is what's the scope, but then it's like those attendances, things that you got to think about. So I'll be always how I used to look at things, because when I was pricing variations, etc., we had like access was always a big thing for us, because when I was a subcontractor in particular, and this would have been the same for you, you're lifting heavy units that require lots of health and safety, lots of things done properly. So you think about it not just about what is it you're doing, it's how you do it. So there's that element. So that again is something like internally, if you're in these existing buildings that we were when I was a main contractor, ceilings are about 20 meters high. Yeah. So how are you doing your like plastering up that high? Again, do you need like a crash deck put in to be able to do these different levels? So that's one, is I'd always be thinking about the attendances. And if you're unsure, QSs out there, speak to the people who know.
Yeah.
Your best mate, your site manager, your project manager, they know exactly. And that's what I'd always ask them anyway, is like, how do we need to provide anything? Don't worry, we've got a crash deck going in anyway, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So you'd know that.
Walk the site. Would you walk the site?
Possibly. I used to go onto site twice a week anyway.
So you'd know. Yeah. So what I'm saying is you wouldn't be like, I've got to do the brickwork package, I'm going to walk the site. You would be walking the site every
If it was a QS, you should need to intimately know that project inside out. So when something comes up, you're like, I know exactly where that is. That's just the way it should be.
That's where the arch is. That's where the specials are.
And then when coming back onto the specials, right, design information can be great, or it can be medium, or it can be terrible. I've worked on projects where it's all of the above, right?
Yeah.
And the great information is that you'll have like maybe a section through the archway and really heavily spec'd out what kind of lintels going in there. Because there is inevitably, when it comes to like those finishes, like brickwork is a finish, right? You will have like, there's elevation, but then what else is in there? Other lintels, etc., etc. And if there's not, I think you should be speaking to your site manager saying, we need to raise some RFIs here to get the detailed information. Because you might just get a brickie and it might be like on a pound a brick or whatever they're going to do to install it, something like that, right? But that's not really taking into account all the bits and pieces that have got to do, and that's where you start getting variations. And you're like, what's that for? What's that for? And it's totally unclear. And my approach would be, when it comes to something like brickwork, is have a look at what are the openings. Is there information there? Have a look at your structural information. Do we need to have a consideration?
Challenge your site manager, challenge your technical person, operational person. Like, have you got enough there? Have you got enough there? What else do you need? And then if there is stuff, you draw it out and you're asking your client.
Who's supplying the lintels? All these bits and pieces. So, again, your site manager, project manager should be your best friend. You should be not procuring in isolation. You should be doing it together.
Okay. And so as you were talking there, and again, brickwork, far from a master of it. In terms of like going back to the question, scope gaps and interfaces, and you were talking about variations upstream, downstream, right? And that scope gap word, something that struck me, and I never did this, but it might sound like it's a good idea, right? Is so clearly something has gone wrong on a project if you're worried about a scope gap on any package, right? So what scope gaps and interfaces should I be most worried about? Perhaps you should be kind of looking at the last job. What went wrong on the last job, right? And then say, okay, that item X, item Y, item Z went wrong. I'm not going to try and give you a technical idea about brickwork, right? But what went wrong? What were the variations? Where did I lose money with that subby last time? And if I haven't done one before, where did anyone lose money with brickwork or whatever, right? And actually then, because therein lies the problem. We've talked about scope gaps and like having a library of scopes. As any good QS, whether it's your company who has that library of scope or it's you, like you should be constantly going back and forth. I don't think I ever did it, so I'm sounding smarter than I actually am here, right? But I never went back at the end of the job and thought, oh, it's variation 71 and 97 is where I lost all that money. You're kind of storing it. But actually, if you do go back and say, that's where we lost the money and put it in, over time, your scope gaps are going to get smaller and smaller, right?
Yeah, there was a wry smile from me, because how many times would you capture all the things that you messed up on? You'd be like, "Oh, just put that to one side."
No, but you would push it. You'd push it. You wouldn't be publicising it.
No,
but you should be. And I agree. Yeah, most of the time, because you weren't publicising. Oh, I messed up, and there was a scope gap there. It was kind of swept under the carpet. But if you can sweep it under the carpet for, what's the word? Like internal image.
Yeah.
But actually you should be pulling that out and saying, I'm not doing that again. Yeah. Like that was the problem. And I don't think in any of the companies that I worked in there was, I didn't ever have and I had some great bosses. I never had anyone say, go back and look at post-project. What happened? Where were the non-recoverables? Mm-hmm. And stop it next time and build that library. But it's a good idea, right?
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea. And only if they had technology out there that helps you do it.
Hopefully that answers that question. So another question here, which is kind of technical. It's about design development. I'm going to take this one to start with, right? So the background here is this is the question. I work for a main contractor and our subcontracts a JCT 2016 D&B. Here we go. What did I say? I knew 20% of them. This is where I'm going to start licking my lips, right? I'm trying to blag it. So are subcontractors entitled to a variation if the architect rejects their design and requires more of a certain item to make the design compliant? How do I best manage the drawing approval process? So I'm going to take this as a subby, right? Because I worked for design and build subcontractor almost always on JCT 2016. And these it always came up, but I'm going to have to flip it because I'm subbing, I want to get paid, right? So first things first, like a lot of people don't understand that a design and build contract, whether you're a main contractor or a subcontractor, is the architect is much less important than you think they are, right? But there's kind of like this deference to the architect over, like, just generally, right? From traditional contracts, the architect is right. We take what they say, and they are God. But on a D&B contract, the contractor or subcontractor has exactly the same insurance and responsibility level of the architect, because they are going to design and build the contract, right? And so I know this because it came up all the time, and I actually created like a internal like design and build for dummies course.
Was it?
No audit doc, right? Oh God, I am painfully sad, aren't I? I was asked because I was the, in inverted commas, the JCT expert, right? And I was working for an Italian company. The design was done in Italy. The Italian designers didn't care less about JCT, and we were losing money hand over fist, right? So one of the really key things about the design, like the drawing approval process, and I've actually done like a downloadable, which again, if you guys want it, send me a message. I'll share this ebook. It was all about how to manage the drawings. And I say this in the context of the architect is no longer the boss. The contractors are on the same footing, right? And if you go to an unamended JCT, and the typical process of drawing approval and the design process will be contractor submits their design, architect responds and puts it as B status, right? It's never A to start with, in my experience. It's always B or sometimes C. And if it's B or C, it can only be B or C if, and the contract will say this, you can only mark it B or C if you're not in accordance with the contract, right? So, stupid example, we're sat in the studio, the wall behind you is white brick, right? Say I designed it as red brick, that isn't compliant. You can mark it as B, right? But what would always happen to us on jobs would be you'd get I'm sure subbies and even main contractors will have this experience. You will get a drawing back with like 20 comments on it. And someone will say, in that example, that's a white brick. Could it be red brick? Actually, we'd quite like red brick. Or, that door is PPC. Could it be anodized, actually? Or could we do this? Could we do that? And it's almost like that the approval process becomes like a brainstorming process, which it absolutely isn't, right? And then the architect waddles off, and all of a sudden the project is like 10 weeks in delay. So I'm not answering this question directly, but my point is, first things first, if you're a contractor or a subcontractor, you're at the same level as the architect, a little less deference. And then with that, make sure you've read the contract, because Schedule 6 or whatever it is in the JCT basically says they cannot say it's B, for my example, with the white brick, could this be a red brick, right? And you can just respond and say, yeah, it could be, but it's in accordance with the contract. We're cracking on. That's an A. And moving on. And like the funny thing is, for some reason during design, nobody cares about the program. I don't know how often you were involved in the design process of a project, but as going back to Battersea, right? That the design process on that job was like 9 months before we were anywhere near site. Hardly anyone gave a damn about the program. And then as soon as it's day one on site, where are you? What are you doing? What, like all of a sudden everyone cares about the program, right? But whilst during design, just letting the architect and the design team just be like,
I feel like it's more tangible. That's why.
You can see it, can't you? Right? Yeah. But you on so many jobs you would lose weeks and days, because if you accept that B status, so what? I'm not going to order those bricks now. So should we? And then I'll resubmit it with red brick, and then you've got 2 weeks to respond. It's nonsense, isn't it? Yeah. But that was how it worked. So I'm trying to remember what the original question was here, but I've gone off on a tangent, haven't I? But so how do I best manage the drawing approval process? I would say read the contract and don't let the architect use the drawing submission process and the approval process as a brainstorming. You would even see it like
we had the same, like when we had D&B packages,
Yeah.
or like in contracts design portion in our JCTs, we had it where it would be like design development or evolution of the design through a kind of back and forth on submittal process. We're like, no, we're not here to evolve
your design.
Yeah, your design.
Or do your coordinate. You're not coordinating your design team on our drawings. What is this?
Yeah, and you do find it gets like changes get slipped in underneath.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be very like cutthroat and say, look, is there a change in the employer's requirements? Because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Employer's requirements, specifications, concept, drawings, right? If it looks completely different and the spec or is completely changed, different type of brick, different type of coloured glass, whatever.
Yeah.
That is a change in requirements. You're entitled to a variation. You're entitled to an extension of time potentially, but there's time and cost involved. And I think it's always having that contract set of employers' requirements sat with you. And we were talking about earlier in the show about the contract audit template.
Yeah.
It should be, there's something in that about upskilling your design team, because I was quite fortunate when I worked for a D&B subcontractor that they were pretty hot on the design changes.
Yeah.
So, we had a design manager, design director in-house coordinating the designers, and they would pick up like these design change variations, and they were getting picked up during the process. Mm-hmm. Is it clear change of employers' requirements? Yes or no? It's funny because this whole D&B process has made it really grey, but it should be black and white.
Well, the whole principle was black and white, right? You did the design, Mr. Contractor. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, you're completely right. I'll have to check my contract audit document now to check that is in there. Or we may have an addition to the contract audit, but it's exactly that thing, right? So actually, when you're looking at that contract and it's 1,000 pages, if there's design, what are the rules of engagement for design? Put that in your contract audit document. I talked yesterday about, I was educating the site team on that Battersea project. We've got these notices. This is how we're going to act. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You're going to do this. Same with the design, right? So the design rules are this. You design manager, if ever this happens, this is how you respond, right? And if it does happen, you need to flag it to us. And actually beforehand, and I'm going to talk as a subby now, and you're my main contractor, I would go to you at the start of the design process, and I didn't do this all the time, but it sounds good now, so I'm going to say it. I'd go to you at the start and say, right, we've got 12 weeks to do this design. We're going to probably do 3 submissions. And during that submission process, we need to collectively, me and you, go back to the architect and say, your coordination is going to happen outside of the submission process. If it happens on the submission process, we're just going to forget about it. We're going to ignore it. So just be prepared for that, right? Because often that is where the engineer and the architect are doing their coordination, because they're never in the same room. That honestly happens to me loads. You'd end up B or C status, engineer saying, could it be this? Could it be that? It's just, so a simple thing here is contract audit and then manage the contract and understand it on that basis. Hopefully that answers the question. Have I answered the question, Chris?
Don't know. We'll get some feedback on that.
Yeah, we will. And if you want to understand how to manage that process of design approval and submission under JCT 2016, we do have an ebook. Either find it on the C-Link website or send me an email and we can do it. Right, final question of the day. Let's go a little bit more light-hearted. Wow, is this light-hearted? So, I am struggling to find my path as a QS. Contract side versus numbers. I need some advice, please. So I'm currently struggling to figure out where I best fit in the quantity surveying world. I'd love your advice. From my experience, I feel like my strengths are definitely on the contract side, dealing with JCT, NEC, handling delays, defects, etc., etc. I've been doing some work experience at Wilmot Dixon, and honestly, the heavy number side of things just isn't for me. That said, I keep hearing conflicting things. My university always emphasises that consultancy roles pay more money, but I've also heard contractor roles can pay more as well, especially with senior surveyors managing big packages. It's kind of like linked to the first one, right? I'm at a crossroads, still struggling to secure a permanent position. A few questions. 1, which side, contractor or consultancy, is less technical and less number focused? 2, are there QS roles that lean more towards contracts rather than number crunching? And 3, does the number heavy aspect decrease as you become more senior in QS roles? Go on, mate. What do you think of that?
We were talking about our respective strengths, weren't we?
A few episodes ago.
A few episodes ago. The number side of things, it's a hard one, isn't it? Like, you'll always be responsible for the ultimate end reporting for the industry, for your like
company.
Yeah, your company or your division or whatever that might look like.
Because your KPI is profit, right?
Yeah, because you're KPI'd. And I don't think there is an escaping of the numbers, but your strength was very much contractual strength, wasn't it? You were less about, you didn't like, no one, I don't think many people enjoy pricing variations and like that, or doing cost reports, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. If you are, but I think these roles exist in both organisations. You still need to have a handle on both. You still need to be able to do both. But if you are seen as the in-house JCT expert or whatever, they might think, right, Paul, you're going to manage all these QSs. When there's extensions of times or really tricky projects, you're getting involved. You don't need to do day-to-day variations and stuff like that. You've got your trainee QSs, your assistant QSs, etc., managing that bit. So there is a way for you to kind of craft that role, whether or not, you know, it depends, doesn't it? Because my role as a QS in a main contracted organisation was way different to when I was a subby. So I was procuring heavily. So when you're talking about technical, I feel like when you're procuring, you should be technical. You should have a technical mindset. So if that isn't your strength, then maybe you then are looking at the consultant side of things. And if you look at that role, I don't understand it in its entirety because I've never...
You've been contractor faced. Yeah.
But I've worked closely with them. They'll look at things like, you know, they'll have a keen hand on GIA rates and stuff like that, just generally when they're looking at doing cost forecasting and things like that. So again, consultant might be doing a lot of cost forecasting.
I think consultants is going to be more number focused.
Which is more numbers. And then you might get roped into if there's a claim potentially. As well.
I was speaking to
it's on both sides. I think it's hard to avoid.
Yeah, my instinct, and again, like you only being on contractor side, my instinct would be that you're going to be more number heavy as a PQS. But saying that, I was speaking to PQS last week, who is really excited about this adjudication that they're involved in. So there's bits and pieces to everything. I mean, the other thing about this question, and does the number heavy aspect decrease as you become more senior in the QS role? Yes. I mean, I remember, managing 2 or 3 jobs on my own, and then you go to commercial manager, you manage a team, you think, oh God, I don't have to do any variations anymore. This is great. I love this. Or I didn't. This person sounds quite similar to me in terms of like I wasn't numbers. I was more interested in the contract. But I think the point is, and this, I don't know the age of this person, but they've been doing some work experience at Wilmot Dixon suggests that they're in the early stages of their role. Whether you like it or not, you kind of need to get your reps in, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of. I didn't like the numbers. And as soon as I got to commercial manager and was managing people and wasn't doing variations day to day, yay, that's a relief. You're not doing it anymore. And you're doing more of the interesting EOTs and all that good stuff, right? Which I liked in the contract side. You can't get there. You can't jump it. You kind of got to do it, haven't you? And you'll be much better off for having done it, right?
I mean, how could you even manage a team if you didn't know how it's done?
Yeah.
As well, like. It's that starting on the shop floor, making it all the way to MD. It's knowing each level that is required. So what should your assistant QSs be doing? What should your trainee QSs be doing? What are your senior QSs? What's involved at that stage and going up that ladder? You're going to have to, unfortunately, do some graft with things that you don't really want to do. And that is life. But there is a way to craft that path to what you did and like what I did and went in like slightly different directions. Yeah. By being stronger in certain elements, and people will see that. And there are consultants out there that just specialise in things like claims and contracts.
Yeah, exactly. That could be the end path for this person, right? And I would, if you're interested in contracts and like the legal or the written side of it rather than the mathematical side of it, I would like commit to it in terms of go and do a load of CPD around contracts, tell your manager you're interested in contracts, learn the JCT, like not get to that 10, 20%, which we've been talking about, where you're really competent in it, and then you're having a conversation with someone and you can hold yourself and just focus on it that way. Is there more money to be made in consultancy or contracting? I don't think there's probably that much of a difference to be made between the two. You might be...
Lifestyle might be different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if you have aspirations for travel, probably go consultancy. If you have aspirations for, a stake in a business as a QS, maybe the sub-E side is a good one. But, again, a lot of consultants at PQS I was speaking to, their path is very much, you kind of get to partner stage and you do have a stake in that business. So there's a number of different ways to do it.
What I would add to that as well is I don't think there's harm in being a jack of all trades for like say 10 years of your career, learning different bits and elements. Like I learned a bit of contract, bit of numbers, bit of technical along the way, and I feel more rounded as a surveyor for that. And I'm not an expert in either area, but I can hold my own in those three elements, if that makes sense. And you can I always used to look at it this way. When I had a bit of a smile here, because I remember many instances with PQSs when I was a main contractor, a lot of them lacked the technical elements, like didn't understand how.
That's what us sub-E QSs used to think about main contractor QSs.
Yeah, well, I worked on all sides, so I do know. And I had a keen interest of like literally watching people do things on site, thinking about how things are built. I had an interest in it. Although I'm very impractical. I can't build an IKEA wardrobe or anything like that. But I think there's no harm in just learning all the little bits and pieces that need to go together, because when you become, say, a really highly contractual commercial QS, if you've got some of that technical nous, right? Because there will be things that come in when you have a claim, and there's technical bits in there,
100%, or variations, or whatever,
variations or whatever, right? Knowing is that BS or not is. It could, because that's how you can win over arguments with people who aren't technical. You could say, this is how we did it. And they wouldn't necessarily know, right? And the wall is getting pulled over their eyes. Yeah,
that would happen to me often, to be honest. I mean, I think taking it back just to wrap up the episode and close the conversation, is there more money to be made, contractor consultancy-ish? Depends what you're most focused on. Is it more number focused with PQS rather than sub-E or main contract QS? Probably a little bit would be but nothing major, right? You kind of craft your own way. And I think the big takeaway is the beauty of being a QS, this is going to be a bit cringy now, is that there's kind of one of three things, isn't it? You can either be good on the contracts, good technically in terms of the design and really get the site and how things go together, or good in terms of numbers, or you can be all three, right? But if you want to be focused on the contract side, if that's where you find the joy, pick a contract. If you're working for a company that's always on NEC, pick NEC. If it's on JCT, FIDIC, whatever, do the same. Focus on that. You'll have a great career, because QSing is a great career. And on that note, come on.
Let's go to the pub.
Let's go to the pub. So we will be back. I will be back next week. Chris will be back in 4 weeks. Thank you very much for listening to Question Time number 4. Make sure you send us your questions. Cheers.
Thank you.